Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this program is Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and it's coming to you from Channel 23, Woodstock Educational Television, and also from YouTube, Let's Live with Thurman Greco. And I have two very special guests this evening that have not been on our show before, and they were recommended by Janine Maurer, who has been on this show several times. So I'm going to start off by asking you to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Lydia Pidlusky, and should I say what I'm doing here?
Yes.
I am a writer and director and actor of a show that is being performed at the Woodstock Historical Society tomorrow, September 10th, and Saturday, September 17th at 3 p.m. It's called Voices from the Past. Meet 7 historical characters that shape the story of Woodstock.
Oh, very interesting. So this is a Woodstock show.
This is a Woodstock show about historical characters in Woodstock.
Oh, wow. That ought to be too much fun. Now, if you'll introduce yourself.
Sure, I'd love to. My name is Frank Larquette, and I'm based here in the Hudson Valley. I live in Rosendale in Ulster County, and I am an actor, writer, director. I own a theater company called Theater on the Road, and for the past 9 years I've been involved with what I call living history, and I'm very pleased to be partnering with the Historical Society of Woodstock on this project, Voices from the Past. I'm acting as co-producer and working with Lydia on this wonderful project.
Now, this production is at the, where is it at?
It's at the Ames House on Como Drive.
Okay, so is that the one that's down low on Como?
I believe so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, when you drive in, you go past the church, and then there's a
Yes,
little parking lot to the right?
there's a parking lot on the right. You go to the next driveway, you'll make a right, you'll see the house. You'll see the Ames House on the right.
Okay.
And on the left, there's a field, which is where this performance is going to take place.
Oh, wow.
Outdoors.
So it is outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, how neat. Okay. All right. And now, how did this production come about?
Well, I'll let Frank talk on that.
Well, I do cemetery tours in Kingston every year at the Old Dutch Church, where we present 6 or 7 historic characters, usually at their grave sites. But we're not limited to people that are buried in the cemetery. We've used a lot of other people who are notable through history over the last 3 centuries. So last October, at the end of one of the tours, I was approached by Weston, who is the president of the Historical Society of Woodstock, and he asked me if I would be interested in working with him presenting cemetery tours here in Woodstock, at the Woodstock Cemetery. So we went back and forth for a few months, and then it was decided that we would not work in the cemetery because of the distance between graves. It would be hard for people who have accessibility issues and so forth. So what can we do? What can we do? So I pitched this play idea where it would be at one location. I like the phrase Voices from the Past, meet 7 characters who shaped the story of Woodstock. And presenting these characters, and each of them would present different themes. Lydia and I have been working off and on for 7-8 years. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would be a fantastic project for Lydia. So the Historical Society of Woodstock agreed to this idea, and then I turned it over to Lydia, and she wrote the script. She did all of the research, all the historic research. The good folks at the Historical Society of Woodstock, including Janine Maurer, Richard Hepner, they suggested the characters that Lydia ended up writing and presenting. So that's how this all came about.
Okay, so and Janine has been on this show, and so has Richard Hepner. Mm-hmm. So now I see the connection totally. And this is an outdoor program.
Correct.
On Saturday afternoon.
That's correct.
Oh, how
For the
neat.
next 2 Saturdays.
For the next 2 Saturdays.
tomorrow, the 10th at 3 p.m., and the 17th at 3 p.m.
Now, and then the next time we see you, it will be in October
Sure,
in Kingston.
in Kingston at the Old Dutch Church.
And you will have 7, is it different people every year?
Every year. Well, we're bringing back Governor George Clinton this year, and he'll be standing at his gravesite. We're using the theme this year, The City Awakens, and it's about the birth of a city in this place, Kingston, which was once Wiltwick. So Governor Clinton was an important player in that history. But for the first time, we're presenting a Native American character, and also we're presenting Sojourner Truth. Now, she's not buried there, but she's connected to the courthouse, which is right across the street, where she fought to have her son freed in the very early 19th century. So 6 characters we're presenting in Kingston.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about the birth of Kingston.
Yes.
And that's interesting that you've done that, because Kingston is having a rebirth. If I ever saw a place
You
have
might
a
say.
it's completely new and whatever.
It
you know,
is.
so
And fortunately, not only longtime residents, but new residents are interested in the history. I grew up in Kingston, and I didn't really care about the history until I lived away for 27 years and moved back.
and then you came back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that when the pandemic came, or it was interesting to me, when the pandemic came and I saw all these people coming through, my first thought was, well, if you don't have children in school, you're not going to stay here. But you know what? I think they're staying.
I think so.
I think so.
You could ask the realtors.
They're staying.
Yeah, inventory is extremely low, so
Yeah,
the newbies are all staying.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They think that it's really nice here.
Yes.
And of course, it is an absolutely adorable place. So tell me about what's going on from the voices of the past.
Well, if you want to talk about adorable places, Woodstock has been considered adorable for a very, very long time, and I end the play talking about, so one of the characters is Anita M. Smith. If you're familiar with her, she moved up here. She was a wealthy socialite, but she wanted to paint, so she moved up here in about 1912. And she started out painting, but she also became a historian because she was so interested, as she describes, in order to be able to paint the landscape of the Catskills, she wanted to learn something of the people that
that's
lived
interesting.
there. She
Okay.
felt she couldn't do it without that. So she traveled all over, got all sorts of stories, and she published some books. She published them herself, Woodstock History and Hearsay, which is fascinating and written in her own voice, which was delightful for me as a historical playwright to be able to hear the character's voice that they created themselves and just be able to take sections out of it. Oh, we're going to have Anita talk about this. Plop it into the script. So that was very, very great for me. But she ends her book, and so I end the play as well, talking about the local artists at the time, what they thought of Woodstock, living here. And one of the things that they say is that even though they don't find the stimulus for painting in Woodstock, they love living here. They like looking up at Overlook Mountain, that there's no better place in the world for artists to live. They move away, they always end up coming back. So Woodstock has very long been a beloved, cute place that people come to and don't want to leave. Anita M. Smith, actually, she came just for a month. She intended to stay for a month, and that was it. She stayed for good.
Woodstock is full of people that showed up for a month.
Exactly.
No, it really is, and then they couldn't figure out how to get back home.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't figure out where home was.
Well, because they found home here.
So now, is this your first summer to do this? Or first September to do this?
This is, yes. So I haven't worked with the Historical Society of Woodstock before. So this is a new experience for me, writing a historical play, doing all the research. It's taken up my entire summer.
Only your summer.
Yes.
You are a fast worker, lady.
Wow, diligent worker. Every day, every weekend. Yes, it's
When
been my
did you
life.
take on this assignment?
Well, we
When
met
did-
in beginning of June, but I had a children's show that I was producing at the Colony at the time, so that was my focus. So I started this mid-June. Then, of course, I got COVID for a week and a half, and so brain fog, you can't think anything. And I did another show at the Rosendale Theater in that time as well. So it's been a busy past 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, she wrote a full-length play, researched all the characters in that period of time.
It was
amazing.
actually, it was a 2-hour show. It was almost just as hard to edit it down to an 80-minute show or so than it was to research and write it, because there's so many great stories. I had to take out so much fabulous stuff. So that's, I'm hoping that the Historical Society of Woodstock will allow me to write another play, because there's so much great stuff that's still to be told.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
We'll
Why
see.
not?
We'll see.
Woodstock loves to have shows about itself.
And so one of the things about this play is that I did a lot of research. Anita M. Smith's books, Alf Evers' books. I also researched into A.J. Williams Myers, because we have an escaped slave in the play. And so, of course, that was a lot of extra work for me, to learn about that whole world. 2 centuries, we go all the way from the Civil War to World War II. So we're covering a lot of history here. We've got we start out with Elias Hasbrouck from the Revolutionary War, one of the founding members of Woodstock.
Wow. So now, is this the first play this is not your first play?
Not my first play. Back in 2017, I actually won a short play contest at Frank's studio at the time. It was an Audience Choice Award for their favorite play. It was just a 20-minute play. It was something from my personal life. But I've written before, and I've had that success winning that competition, which was very cool. And so, but this, I've never done anything like this. This was a very big challenge for me, and which is wonderful, though, because I spent so much time on it, not just researching, but also what I did is I took it a little bit out of the historical fact, and I added a little historical fiction as well, just to make it fun, Imagined the characters' personalities a little bit, their relationships. So you'll have like your big chunks of history and your stories, and then in the middle, when they're talking to each other, it gets a little imaginative.
Some personal things.
Yes, but then you get back to the history.
Yes.
So I'm hoping there's something for everyone. We've got stories, just someone telling a story that was interesting, so something that happened during their time that other people would find interesting, like when you get around and with your friends and you talk about the interesting things that are happening in town. And then we also have longer sections where it's a lot more just descriptive of history, and then we have some jokes and a little bit of drama mixed in.
So this is what has been happening now. Do you have anything else coming after this one? What is your next project?
Oh, my next project. Well, I have a couple projects in mind. A couple writing projects, actually. And part of this was to get me in the mood for those writing projects, because I've had them in my mind for a while. So I mentioned that short play that I won the competition with. I'd like to expand it to a full-length play. It was about my mom and her and my struggles with Alzheimer's and some other things that were going on during that time. And I'd like to expand that. I don't think anyone's really quite ever told that kind of story from the perspective that I present it from. So I'd really like to expand that. I think that there's something to say there. And then I also, I did a play earlier this year where I got to play Medusa. And she's just my new favorite person. I love her.
So you're going to do that again?
The Medusa show? I don't think that that'll be
Are you
showing
gonna do
again.
another
But I
Medusa
am
show?
going to. But I'm going to write about Medusa. I have ideas
Very
that I can't
good.
tell you too much about because I don't want to give it away.
Right.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that ought to be a winner because you know Medusa is popular with everyone.
She's fabulous. There's a
Yeah.
good reason for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're gonna keep yourself busy.
I am going to keep myself busy. Yeah.
All right.
I've actually already agreed to do we're doing a like a voter, I don't even know, but I'm doing something at the Rosendale Theater coming up in October for voter registration drive, something like that.
Oh, please do. We need. One of my dreams is to show up on November the 1st and see that everyone's wearing T-shirts that say vote. You know?
That would be exciting to see. I would agree with you on that.
Agreed.
You know, the first thing I did when I moved to Woodstock was voter registration. And I just really feel like if we ever needed to do voter registration,
Now
today's
more than
the day.
ever.
But that's not what our show is about. So what have you got coming up, sir?
Well, before I answer that question, Lydia is also performing on Monday, September 19th.
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
September 20th.
20th. Sorry about that.
Where and what about?
Is it the Best Western?
Okay,
in
so let
Kingston?
me give you a little backstory. Kingston is hosting a statewide historical convention.
Oh, wow.
150 representatives from 150 historical societies statewide are having a convention in Kingston the third weekend
In October?
in September.
Oh, in September.
Yes.
It's
So
happening
the
now.
Tuesday after this last show.
Yes.
So yes, I'm keeping busy.
So we have been asked to participate, and Jeff Miller, Ulster County historian, contacted us, and there's a dinner at the Best Western on Tuesday, September 20th, and why don't you take it from there?
And he shared with me we're going to be performing about 6 different songs. They're Ashokan work songs.
Oh, really?
Yes, so I haven't even started practicing, I'll tell you. But they are, so he gave me all the lead sheets and all the lyrics, but all the melodies are to known songs of the time. But yes, so we're going to be performing for the historians of New York State Ashokan work songs.
Oh, how cute.
Jeff will be on guitar and I'll be singing.
That's wonderful.
It really is. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Who thought that one up?
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller, the historian Mr. Miller. He called me and asked me if I knew someone who was a singer, musician. And Lydia, of course.
And that's me.
There she is,
I
right there.
graduated from SUNY New Paltz with a jazz vocal degree.
So that's, well, you know, that's really what just happened to you, what you just talked about, is he called you up, he was recruiting you. He
Right.
was asking you who you know.
Right. But this happens to me. This is how I operate.
Well, that's
you
how
asked
you get
me-
jobs, is by getting recruited.
Right. And I'm fairly well networked. I got a call from Mohonk Mountain House who asked me to put together a spooky Halloween weekend event, which I'm in the middle of. I also lecture up at Mohonk on 2 different subjects. One, ghost stories of the Hudson Valley, and the other is the bootleg era in the Hudson Valley. Next weekend, we are opening the original Broadway production of Dracula on Bannerman Island. And I have the cemetery tours in the Old Dutch Church. I'm doing cemetery tours in Rhinebeck as well. So this is a very busy season. On top of that, I perform as Edgar Allan Poe, and I have 2 bookings to bring Mr. Poe to schools, one in late September and one in early November.
So this is your busy season.
This is my I've never been as busy as I am now.
That's wonderful.
Do you want to hear more?
Yeah, yeah.
He's got it.
I do.
Well, I also have a murder mystery company, and October is our busiest month, and we perform comedy murder mystery dinner theater, and I have 9 or 10 bookings for a new show, not written by me this year. So, yeah, and then once we get through November, we do the only dinner theater version of A Christmas Carol throughout the region, including up at Mohonk Mountain House.
Where is the dinner theater?
I have 7 or 8 steady locations. Beekman Arms, the Best Western in Kingston, Mohonk Mountain House, La Chambord and Hopewell Junction. So there's others. There are others. I've got.
How does a person connect into that? If you want to get some tickets and you're new to the area and you don't really know.
Okay, so go to murdercafe.net and it'll answer all of your questions. The company's 24 years old, and I make no apologies for writing, directing, and performing Murder Mystery Dinner Theater. It has served me very well.
They're a lot of fun.
They're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Audiences love them. Ours are, I want to say a notch above. They're fully scripted, but they do allow for audience interaction.
And the costumes are always superb.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
My wife is the costumer, and she puts so much into it because you're up close. You're performing right in the center of the audience. It's a different type of theater.
And Kristen, Frank's wife, does all the makeup and the music. She owns KTM Salon in Red Hook. It's an organic hair salon. She's fantastic.
So she does all the makeup and
Yes.
hairstyling.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. And you've been doing this now for 24 years.
24 years.
Yeah, that's 24.
My theater company is 24 years old. I left the area. I ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada. I was involved with theater, raising 3 children, working my day jobs. I was in the newspaper business. I was in the printing business. I'm a graphic artist. So I got back into theater, and I stumbled into Murder Mystery Dinner Theater, and I just fell in love with it. So we ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada. I was a major accounts manager with the Review Journal, the Las Vegas Daily, and I started my murder mystery company. We did a lot of convention work, a lot of private company parties, and when I moved back here 14 years ago, I brought the company with me, and people say, you can't do murder mysteries. Nobody's going to come and see that. Actors won't perform in murder mysteries. I said, I pay and they get dinner, and it's like, sign me up. So I've been doing it throughout the entire region for the last 13 years.
So where do you advertise if people want to just find out what shows or what murder mysteries?
They can go on the website.
Okay.
I do advertise a lot. I promote. Each of the venues we perform in also promotes whatever show we're doing.
And if you have a favorite restaurant that you want a murder mystery to come to, make sure you go and tell them, bring Murder Cafe.
Thank you, Lydia. You're better at this than I am. Yes, we can fill a room. It's like, how do I fill this room when it isn't wedding season? Well, I can fill the room for you. People love comedy, murder, mystery, dinner theater.
Yeah, it's fun.
So then, on top of everything else, like I said, 8 or 9 years ago, I was approached by the Historical Society of Kingston, who asked if I would put together a play based on Kingston's Gilded Age.
That sounds like
so
fun.
I jumped into that. That led me to the Old Dutch Church Cemetery tours. I'm going to give a shout out to Pastor Rob Sweeney, who got me involved in Living History Cemetery tours. And this isn't going to be spooky, frightening horror shows. Other people are doing that and doing it well.
Yeah.
So we decided to do something else, to take a different approach, where we present historic characters and they're standing in front of you. These are not reenactments. A lot of historic sites do reenactments, and they do them really well, where they have a person in costume and they're demonstrating a skill or a craft from the 17th, 18th, or 19th century. There are a lot of people doing history tours. But to actually go to a historic site and meet the historic character that's relevant to that site, who doesn't stand there spouting facts but interacts with you, that's what I wanted. And as Lydia was talking about taking artistic license with these characters, the actor, if the monologue is well written and the actor puts a personality through the words. You're talking to a real person. A real person is standing there in front of you. It doesn't matter if it's Governor George Clinton. I didn't, but I wrote a monologue for Teddy Roosevelt up at Mohonk Mountain House. Teddy Roosevelt, President Teddy Roosevelt, stayed at Mohonk, and we wanted an actor to portray Teddy Roosevelt at Mohonk, and he made him engaging, actually talked to the people and wasn't just spouting facts. So it's first-person narratives that interact, that are well-researched, well-costumed, and been doing that for 8 years at the Old Dutch Church, and what came out of that is me being contacted by the Historical Society of Woodstock and Lydia and Voices from the Past.
Well, that's enough to keep 5 or 6 people busy full time, and that's just 2 of you. So
Yes.
you're going all the time.
All the time. That's
Well,
what we do.
how do you find the people?
The characters?
Yeah.
I usually start with a theme. Like last year, we did the 1920s. We called it Boomtown. And we wanted people that represented Kingston in the 1920s. I don't know how many people know this, but 2 famous bootleggers operated in and around Kingston, one of them being Legs Diamond, who owned and operated a illegal brewery right in the center of Kingston. It was called Barman Brewery. So we had Legs Diamond. Dutch Schultz is further down the Hudson Valley. So we had Legs Diamond. We had a couple that performed at a vaudeville house on Wall Street in Kingston in the 1920s. So all of the characters last year represented the Boomtown theme. We had a retailer, Mrs. Leventhal, who owned a furrier on Wall Street. She still has descendants around the area, so we had Mrs. Leventhal from the 1920s. We had the 2 sisters who ran the Rear Bakery in downtown Kingston, which was still there until the 80s. And we had people come who remembered them. So we start with a theme and then we pick the characters from there. So this year is the birth of a city awakens. So characters that are connected to the birth of Kingston.
So that's going to put you further back into the beginning.
Yes.
Of the community.
And the more I did this, the more I realized that we just didn't want to focus on wealthy white European males who were war heroes and industrialists, that there are other stories to be told. And we started diving into the story of women, the immigrants who were responsible for building the Ashokan Reservoir, working in the factories and so forth. So real people, the African American story, enslaved people. So as I got further and further into this, I'm here telling people that slavery was in operation here up until 1827. That's something we never learned in school.
Well, even after 1827, you could still find enslaved peoples in the Hudson Valley.
Yes.
That's in last
Right
place.
there. Thank you, Lydia. So anyway, every time we present a theme, we present characters, and we find more and more hidden stories and histories.
It seems to me that this area just offers so much if your field happens to be art or acting or music or whatever. There is just something there every day.
And there's so many supporters of the arts. You couldn't have all the performers and all the great stuff going on without the supporters. So it's an important part of the community. You have all these great artists doing all this cool stuff, but you have people who are willing to go out and see it.
Yeah, they enjoy doing that. So
So important.
that's
It's
a
very
really
art
nice
friendly,
thing.
the entire area.
So, what would you suggest to a person who wants to follow in your footsteps?
As far as learning history or writing history, or
Yeah, if a person wants to get involved.
honestly, the first thing you got to do is be an armchair traveler. Open up a book and start reading, because they've done the work. The historians have gone out. They have pounded the pavement and driven around, horse and buggy or whatever, however they traveled. They got the stories. They did all the hard work. They put it all in a book. And all you have to do is pick that up and turn the pages. And, you know, you could literally pick up Alf Evers' book or Anita M. Smith's books and open up any page and start reading and be like, wow. There's just cool stories constantly, and especially Woodstock, because Woodstock was not a normal town.
Why is that?
Well, it had a lot to do with the art colony. I mean, but even before that, it wasn't totally a normal town. I mean, during the Revolution, it turned into a practically ghost town, and then it came back into, into a more prosperous town. You had the tourism coming here, but then that didn't stay. Unlike a lot of the other towns in the area that really kept up its tourism business, Woodstock ended up pushing it away. And then the art colony came. And that just completely changed, or that altered the direction of Woodstock forever into a more of an arts community. But there's also always been this sort of, I call it an impish spirit in Woodstock. One of the really interesting facts that I learned was that Elias Hasbrouck was an anti-federalist, as were most people in Woodstock. So they supported secession from Britain and from King George, but they didn't completely support the Constitution. They thought that it gave too much power to the federal government and favored the rich. And I just kind of think of that as, that's that rebellious Woodstock spirit, even way back then. And then I get to play a character, Betsy Booth, and she was a medicine woman who was trained by a Native American medicine man, and one of her things that she's remembered for is she's the first woman on record in Woodstock to wear pants outside.
Hey, go girl.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of these, you've got just a lot of history that is just unlike, I think, anywhere else that you can find. Woodstock is, and this area in general, but Woodstock especially is somewhat special.
So you have the ingredients, and you have the audience, you have the people who are interested. So if you are interested in playing the part, then you've got it. If you want to write music, if you want to act, it's there.
It's there.
Yes, that's wonderful. So it's an opportunity presenting itself.
Each one of these stories, could be a play in itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed that you said that you did a children's production at the Colony.
It was a children's musical variety show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who sponsored that one?
That is my friend Eric Squindo. He has a production company called Eric Squindo Presents, and he's been doing mostly tribute shows at the Colony for a number of years now. Woody Guthrie, Townes Van Zandt. He's got a Nilsson tribute show coming up in a couple weeks, and colony.com. But this was, he wanted to do something to allow the artists to do some of their own original music. So, and kids shows, I mean, they're always great. So yeah, we did a children's show. It was still, though, unfortunately, it was still when there was a lot of COVID restrictions around. So it was a little tough as far as the audience coming with their children. But we had a great time. We had all sorts of different, we had puppets and all sorts of different acts.
So what you're saying is, to me, is that we need to do that again.
We might need to do it again. Yeah, and that's how we end up feeling always about the Eric Squindo Presents shows, because they're just so unique. He gathers all these great local musicians, and so it's a one-of-a-kind show that you'll never ever see again, and then sometimes they'll collaborate into some sort of jam session, so it's a configuration of musicians that you'll never see again. The Nilsson show that he has coming up, he got a few more heavy hitters than he usually gets, so we'll see how that goes for him. They're really fun, special tribute shows. There's something warm about the Eric Swindow Presents shows, and I've been in all of them. I'm not doing Nilsson because I was busy with this, and so I was like, you know what, I can't take on too much. But yeah, I've been in every single one of them, and assistant produced a bunch of them. We did a Muppet Show tribute, right? It was the last show before the pandemic hit. It was a lot of people's last live show, and they would come up to us and say, I'm so grateful that I saw the Muppet Show tribute because it sustained me.
Right.
For a long time. I wasn't able to go out and I wasn't able to see live music, but that Muppet Show tribute was just so much fun. And that's what music is. That's what it all is. It's sustaining. It takes you on a trip without going anywhere.
Well, I think Woodstock feels like we need to be sustained. We really feel that way. I don't know why, but I feel that. And there are a lot of really, really interesting people here who are musicians, who are artists, and it just seems like everybody in Woodstock wants to be.
And you can be.
Yeah, if you'll just work with it.
Right, you just have to work with it and trust yourself.
So that's how
really
it
it.
And
goes.
trust the fact that people will be accepting of your art, whatever it might be. One of the reasons I love theater so much, it combines so many art forms, so many mediums,
Yeah.
visual arts, music, acting, of course.
We've got some music in this show.
Yes.
Claudia Forrest is an excellent fiddle player. We'll be opening and closing the show with Ashokan Farewell. And then in the middle of the show, I found a poem. So it was a postcard, and the art was drawn by one of the art colony people, and then the poem was written also by an art colony person, but we don't know who that person is anymore. It's anonymous.
Oh, really?
But it's a poem about the Catherine Van de Bogart story. And so I saw the poem, and it's just fantastic, so I set it to music, and so we'll have that in the middle to help, I don't know, to bring some beauty to what is a very tragic, horrible story.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's what it's all about. Hey, is there any person, you guys have named a lot of people, is there anybody who is really preparing the children? Teaching the children to dance, teaching the children to sing, there are places teaching the children to paint and to draw. And there is one woman that I know about who does occasionally offer classes in dancing. But I think if you're going to take a person, they don't start at 18, they start at 3.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think that there's, okay, yes, if you're going to be a dancer or something like that, there's a certain amount of physical, work that you have to do, and that helps to start that when you're young. But like I used to run a workshop, and I'm actually kind of going to be bringing it back, called Everybody Can Sing. And the premise that I strongly believe is everybody can sing. I have met people who were tone deaf, and after 3 lessons with me,
that's saying
Trust
a
me.
huge amount.
they could hear the pitch and match it.
I witnessed it.
You're kidding.
No.
That's like miracle stuff.
And I believe it's because something happened. I mostly teach adults this method. Teaching adults singing versus teaching children singing are 2 different methods. But for adults, I find that it's confidence. At some point in their past, in their youth, they either convince themselves or someone convinced them that you're not a singer.
Well,
And
it's
so
true for all
they
of the arts.
stopped. Yeah, and it's true for all of the
I
arts.
totally believe this. I mean, people, when you talk about the visual arts, the common expression is, I can't draw a straight line. And my thinking, that's good, because who wants to draw a straight line?
Yeah, who
boring.
cares?
No artist draws a straight line. And kids can draw without any lessons. And then someone comes along and says, you know what? The sky isn't really yellow. The head is out of proportion with the body, and the kid loses interest. Just like if a kid is singing naturally and someone says, you're a little off key there, a little pitchy there, the poor kid is going to say, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do that anymore.
And it's not even that. It's like listening, seeing the great artists and hearing the great musicians and thinking, well, I could never do that.
Exactly.
I could never be that. And that's okay. You might never be that, or you might never do that, but that's not the point.
But you're different. You might not be that. You might not be Van Gogh or Picasso.
But you might be,
You might be you.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's see what's inside of you. And a lot of this is suppressed by the time you reach your teen years because of outside influences.
And so my
What-
singing workshop is basically encouraging grown-ups to embarrass themselves, because that's what
it.
singing
That's
and
it.
art is. It's embarrassing. You're drawing something and it's not great because you're not a great artist, and it's embarrassing. It's something, a piece of you that you're showing. It makes you feel vulnerable,
When
and
I-
that makes you swallow yourself.
Yep.
And when you got when you get confidence and you can open yourself up, all of a sudden, all that art, like you were talking about, that was available to you when you were a kid, it's still there.
Wow.
We just started working with a man who is in his mid to late 40s, and he hasn't acted since middle school.
Wow.
You know, and I went through that because you have to get a job and raise a family, and he didn't. Now he wants to get back to it, and it's, let's get back to where you were. Let's stop thinking. Usually when I work with an actor who has no experience or had experience and let it go for 20 years, you got to get to that point where you just let it go. Stop worrying about what everyone thinks, because that's what they're worried about. I'll never be him. I'll never be as good as that. No, you're going to be different. You just have to stop thinking it, overthinking it.
And the secret is, when you're in front of an audience, the audience is always rooting for you.
Always.
They want you to do well. And so if you do mess up, the most important difference between pros and amateurs is that the pros go, huh, and keep going. The amateurs, they get off.
They're terrorized. They're traumatized.
And then the audience feels badly, and you kind of lose them. But if you're confident and you're just like, haha, made a mistake, they're just like, yay, and you keep going, and they're with you, totally with you. I learned that in college doing open mics.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I know something because I didn't start writing until, I don't know, 10 years ago. I was taking a writing class, and the writing teacher said, if you're having trouble with writing, learn to draw, because that will work on different brain cells. So I started looking around, where can I find somebody who could give me an entry-level drawing class. And I couldn't find anybody. It was really interesting. People were very open to teaching a 5-year-old, but not a 75-year-old.
That's terrible.
And not an 80-year-old. So that was a very, very interesting concept. And that's when I realized that we are all singers, writers, painters, drummers, whatever.
Dancers.
Yes, we
Yeah.
are all.
We are.
But one of the important things is to try to offer an opportunity to all the children.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure that that's happening as much in Woodstock as we would like. I don't know.
I don't know.
If you don't know, then it's probably not, because
I
you're
don't
on
know.
top of it. I would imagine, because if you're doing so many different things, you're calling on different actors a lot.
Right. Right.
Yeah. You don't use the same actors all the time?
No, I have a core group of people that seem to work with us regularly, but as I'm sitting here, including voices from the past, I mean, there's probably 30 to 35 actors that are going to be working in my company now and over the next few months. And to get 35 actors, you have to call 70, because the good ones are working.
They're already
being made offers, and there's a lot of film work going on in the Hudson Valley, and people are chasing film work now. And the really good actors, you know, there's insecurity involved with acting and performing. They want to line things up next month and 6 months of next year.
That's the key right there. They want to line things up so that by February, they've got the whole year.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a season for that.
True. And it doesn't matter if they're a professional, a SAG member, Actors Equity, where they're being paid. They're still thinking about, okay, I'm working now, but what happens in 2 months? And it's the same thing for local community theater actors. They might be featured in a production and they're getting a lot of press and accolades, but they're thinking, okay, but what happens in December? What happens next year? Are they going to remember me? Are they going to cast me again? Maybe they won't cast me because I had the lead in this play. There's a lot that goes with it.
Yes.
A lot of insecurity.
And how does the weather affect? How does the snowfall affect what happens to your production in January or February?
January is sort of a down month for us because I am
really?
very busy all through December, and January is usually regrouping, planning the year. I'm usually involved with Mohonk Mountain House's Mystery Weekend, which is in early March, so I'm usually rehearsing whatever's coming up. We usually do a murder mystery in February, 6, 7, 8 locations, and then we go right up to Mohonk. So January is also a rehearsal period.
So what you're telling me is that you have it arranged so that when it's snowy in January and February and March, you've pretty well got it taken care
Yeah,
of.
it doesn't affect me at all.
It doesn't affect you.
Although we've made some trips
We have.
in the snow.
We have.
So
Have you really?
Oh, we have. Yeah, it's just I mean,
The one up near Canada? Did we go up to Canada?
to the casino.
To the casino. We did a show up at a casino. It was right on the Canadian border. What, 6 hours away?
Yeah. No, that wasn't a very snowy trip. I'm thinking going down, I forget which restaurant it was, but just, the snowbanks are piled up to here. And we're trying to unload the car and slipping on the ice,
You just do it.
carrying heavy
just
things.
do
You
it.
just, it's part of the fun.
It is part of the fun. And there's always that question, how are we going to do this? Well, how can we fix this? Well, you get some masking tape and you fix it. And that's a general rule in theater. There's magic involved in this. It always happens. We could sit here now and talk about, well, what happens if it rains tomorrow? What happens if this happens?
Oh, no,
It'll
I'm
work.
not thinking about that.
Oh,
I'm just thinking-
I've been keeping an eye on the weather all week.
Oh, have you really?
Yes, I don't think it's going to rain. Knock on wood.
I don't pay too much attention to the weather because I do the flea market. I read tarot cards at the free flea market on Sundays. And so, well, if it rains, well, I guess I won't be there. But if it doesn't rain, I'll be there. So it's just kind of that way. But then I don't have a set, and there's not a crew. It's just me and a deck of cards. It's a completely different
And
thing.
advertising that you have to revamp to give the new date or tell people that it's not happening, or canceling a show is a real hard.
It's hard.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Hard thing.
It's hard. I take it hard. It's hard on the actors. There's a certain level of disappointment. Yeah.
But then you have to update everything that has possibly every little notice that's out there that it's happening, and try to get the word out so people don't start showing up. And
A quick story. A couple years ago, I was performing on Bannerman Island. We had 12 people in the cast, and we had a sold-out performance under the stars on Bannerman Island. And one of the actors accidentally smashed a glass decanter and cut himself here.
Oh.
And he was bleeding profusely. We stopped the show, long story. We told everyone that we were going to have another performance the following Sunday and they could all come back. They all agreed to it. The following Sunday, we're in the middle of the performance. This is the redo. It starts to rain.
Oh, no.
And we're outdoors.
It was
So-
just not going to happen.
So we brought everyone inside into the residence on top of Bannerman. You've been there. We brought everyone inside and we just made it work and they all accepted it.
It
They're
was
on our
what it
side.
was.
They're on our side. It's an art form. You go with it.
You know, I think that there is this theme of history in what you do. And I think that this is wonderful because if you work with history, you always have a new opportunity for a show.
I agree with you. I agree with
There's
you. And
always,
just
she
so
talked about
much.
opening a book. You can always open another book. If you're trying to figure out what are you going to do this next season, well, here's this book. I'll go turn the page to this page. So you always have an opportunity.
It's limitless, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's great. And I also think that history can be capturing so that people can come to one and all of a sudden they're hooked and they'll come back and back and back.
Right. And if I can add to that, someone told me years ago, the past is the future. And the more you learn about history, the more you will see connections. Human nature, people don't change. What we are concerned with now, people were concerned with 200 years ago.
That's actually a theme that I keep
have
coming
no
back
doubts.
to in the play. I think 3 or 4 times it said, that, just things don't change. Some things never change. There's a story here, and this is from the 1850s, about, it talks about, the devil falling asleep on the church step and things like that. But basically the idea is that, people in the past, well, the devil had to work hard to get them, off the straight and narrow path. But nowadays, it's so easy. And this was back in 1850 that this story was being bandied about. And it's like, you could bring that to now. And that's the same thing people are saying now. Back then, everyone was so, good. But now, there's even a story about early 1900s and someone saying, well, everyone's in a rush to get everywhere and they're not stopping and enjoying nature. And we think of the early 1900s as, that was a very slow time and everyone was so, working the land and nuts. There was that idea of people are just in a rush to get places and not stopping and smelling the roses. So all of these things have been going on for so long. And we talk about the Constitution and the 14th Amendment, things that just keep coming back and, coming back into our zeitgeist and being important again. And to hear these people from the past say these things that you could just put right now into the future. And it would sound normal. It's fascinating.
The whole
to me.
story
We
of
are not
immigrants fits
different.
into that.
Yeah.
The immigrant story. There's always the group, the new group. And we could talk the rest of the night about positions toward immigrants and so forth, but it's part of the American story. It's part of the American fabric. And if you understand it, things would make more sense today to people, I think.
There's always this image, though, of the past as being this sort of static,
Yeah.
or it was better, or it was worse. And really, it wasn't all that different.
Maybe we're not teaching it enough in the schools. Giving
I
up a
know when
little
I was in
history for a
school,
little
it was
science.
just reciting facts.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. I didn't like history because I couldn't memorize the names and the dates, but I liked the stories.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I tried to do in here is it's like, just tell some nice, long stories.
Which is much better.
It's so much better because it gives you that, you get the story, but you also get a couple hints about, what it was like to actually live in that time within context. That's, I think, the important part of history that is lost in schools. It's the lack of context.
That's true.
I agree with that.
That's something that we have to keep working on. When you're with an historical group, you are able to reach back and pick on something that's important and bring it forward. So you're talking about the immigrant. You can work with that one. Or if you're talking about the 14th Amendment, you can bring it forward. I think that's very important, right? Oh, we are now down to 5 minutes.
Already?
Yes, that's what
That
everybody
was
said.
fast.
Okay, so we definitely have not even gotten to the first chapter. We're still on the introduction here, so we're going to have to come back. But would you like to talk for the next 5 minutes about where you're going to be and how you can be found and how do we get the tickets, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay.
Well, you can go to, what is the website? The
Historical Society of Woodstock.org. That's Historical Society of Woodstock.org. There's also a phone number, 679-2256. That's how you get tickets. It's $15 in advance, $20 general admission at the door, $15 for students and seniors. Tomorrow, September 10th at 3 p.m. and Saturday, September 17th at 3 p.m. at the Ames House.
It is recommended that you bring your own lawn seating. It will be on the lawn, so you'll be as distant as you want to be from the other
That's good.
people.
That's good. Okay. And then what else have we got going besides this? You've got your October thing going.
Yes, I'm doing living history cemetery tours at the Old Dutch Church in Kingston. We'll be presenting 6 historic characters, all related to the birth of Kingston as a city. Those will be Saturday nights in October at 7 p.m. The line usually starts at 6:30 on the Wall Street side of the church, and you can get tickets livinghistoryny.com. Livinghistoryny.com will give you all the information you need.
Now, what else do we have happening in October and November and December?
I just accepted the role today, but October 9th, I'm doing a show at the Rosendale Theater, and I believe it has something to do with voting. Anne Citron has taken a script of all men and turned it into all women.
Go.
Yes. So that'll be October 9th, and I just got the part today, so I don't even remember the name of the show, but October 9th, Rosendale Theater.
I'm so glad you did that because A, it's voting, and B, it's Rosendale, and we haven't really talked about Rosendale much in this hour.
Loaded with history.
Loaded with history,
Very
loaded,
much.
and also loaded with productions. So we have something happening in October, we have something happening in November, and if somebody wants to find out where you guys are playing in the future, is there a website that they can go to?
Yes, my website is theaterontheroad.com. Theater, Theatre, theaterontheroad.com. It'll give you all the shows and everything we've done and everything we will be doing.
And how about you? What have you got? You got that surprise that you just pitched out, right?
Yes. I have a personal website. It's woefully updated, but you can go to lydiapidlusky.com and you can look me up on the web because, interestingly enough, there's only one Lydia Pidlusky on the web, and it's me.
That's wonderful.
Isn't that neat?
That is so neat.
Yeah. So I'm on. You look me up, I seem like I'm a celebrity. But I'm not.
You know, that is so cute because my name is Thurman Greco, and I have functioned most of my adult life thinking that I was the only Thurman Greco out there. And then I got into YouTube, and I'll be darned if there isn't a famous wrestler by the name of Thurman Greco. And he has captured my YouTube show. And it is so funny, but you've really got it. There is no wrestler named Lydia Pidlusky.
There is not. No, not yet.
That's great.
Maybe that'll be my future career.
Okay, so we're gonna meet next Saturday and the Saturday after, and then we're gonna do some things in October, and we're gonna come back to our show in about 3 months and talk some more. And thank you very, very much, and thank you very, very much, Ellen. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.